here. Oh my God. Girl, you're like a good reporter. Let me just tell you that.
Thank you.
You
That's
are
really nice.
out in the DMV getting to the bottom of things. I love it.
That's what I try to do. That's, always been my goal, is to really try to, put my heart and soul into reporting. And there's so much you realize doing this work, how much is out there that is unknown, and things that should be exposed, and rights that should be wronged. Maybe that sounds a little corny, but it's really true. And there's a lot of people that can use some help, and you realize kind of the power of putting things out there and putting them out to the public, and the change that can come as a result.
Okay, like what? Take us to a story where maybe we didn't know about, or a wrong was righted.
Well, here's one. It's like on my mind. It's kind of a smaller story, really, but I just did it. Like this before I went on vacation. This was the last story I did, I think. A woman who had temporary tags. She had bought a new car, and somebody faked her tags and started getting traffic tickets in DC. She was on the hook for the tickets. The city was sending her the tickets and saying, you have to pay these. She tried to appeal it because she's like, okay, it wasn't my car. Like the car that is caught in this photo enforcement ticket is not even my vehicle. So it should be, you would assume, like something pretty easy for everyone to see, like, okay, somebody committed a crime. They just faked her tag. This wasn't her car. This clearly wasn't her getting the ticket. So like, she doesn't have to pay them.
Yeah.
But she actually did have to pay. And she took it to court, and then she lost in court. And then she found out about a second ticket that she was overdue for. Well, I say she was overdue for, but this person had gotten in her name, in her car's name, I guess. So the city was actually forcing her to pay all this stuff. And so we did that story, I think it was on Wednesday of last week. And then by Wednesday of this week, if I'm remembering correctly, like they dismissed all the tickets. And so she didn't have to pay. And she sent me a really nice email that was like, thank you so much. Like, I couldn't have done this without you. And to me, like, that's the whole point of doing this job. And that's like kind of a smaller example. There's probably some other things I could talk about that had a bigger impact perhaps, but I think just day to day, that's a story that we turned in one day, and the resolution came a few days later. And, we exposed this issue and helped this one person, and potentially, I would hope, help some other people who would end up in that same scenario where, the city needs to acknowledge when this kind of thing is happening, and not be charging people when it clearly wasn't their car.
Wow. Isn't that great? I love that. It's the power of media in such a good way. And does it bother you right now where, like, I feel like in general, people are so down on media, but you give that example, and it's like, this woman probably would have spent 2 years going back and forth in court. The city wouldn't have given a darn until, you put it on the 10 p.m. and they're like, they don't want the bad press. So suddenly within days, they do the right thing. I wish more people knew that. Do you?
That it is hard for me. And I feel like I would always, when people would write stuff on Facebook, like being down on media, I always would feel the need to like get in there, even like people that I like barely know from high school. And I'd end up in kind of these awkward conversations sometimes because I would take such personal offense to it. And I've tried to just chill out on that and just, not let it bother me too much. I think day to day, it does make it a little bit more tense and scary at times going out and reporting, because you just know that there is this negative impression. And I think that among some people, it's cool to, even more so than in the past, to like yell things or to harass the press or say, because you work here, you work there, whether it be Fox, whether it be CNN. You can get it from all angles, really, and have people that, feel like they're justified in coming up to you or being nasty to you. And I don't even mind that so much. I just get nervous when we're live on air that, God forbid, try something weird. Typically it doesn't happen, so it's not really a huge worry, but I do feel that it's something I think about more now than I did definitely when I started my career like 15 years ago, when this just wasn't so much of a thing.
Well, no, you're right, because it's interesting. There's been many themes of these podcasts with all of the great talent from Fox 5, but one of the themes, you're not alone. Some of the other, Josh Rosenthal, Melanie Olmwick, a lot of the reporters are saying they are more nervous than ever going out, because people do have these preconceived notions, not only about the media, but then Fox, and it's like, hey, look, we're local news. We're separate from what you might see from Fox National. And that's really scary at times, especially you're a mom.
Yeah, and it does change I I used to be very brave.
Me
I used to
too.
do things that I look back on and I'm like, you were crazy. I remember as an MMJ in my first market, I'm all by myself in this neighborhood that's kind of like farther away from where like where I lived and from where I was typically reporting. And there, I think it was like a gang shooting, and people were on their porch yelling at me like, "You need to get out of here, little girl. You need to get out of here." I was all alone. I don't even think anyone necessarily knew exactly where I was because I believe it might have been a weekend and it was very short staffed and low key. So, I ended up going into somebody's home to do an interview. And I mean, there was nothing bad that happened. I think it just is something that stands out of my mind, like with time passing, that just the idea of me going into a home where I didn't know these people and I was all alone and unaccounted for, that's crazy. Like I used to be very
I
fearless
know.
and fault, where I'm lucky that things didn't happen, but like I just couldn't be deterred. If someone tells me I need to leave, like it didn't scare me. It just like made me want to push on. Where now, I mean, you got to hold your ground because sometimes people are going to say things to you or whatever, but it is different when you're with somebody. And I think that kind of changes the dynamic. Then it's just you as like a young woman walking around alone with your camera. So yeah,
Wow.
I think, and then becoming a mom, I think it definitely has pushed me more in the direction of you just really have to be cautious and make the right decisions and always put your safety first.
I know. Isn't that the beauty? It's like the beauty and the curse of becoming a mother. Before you're a mother, you're like, screw it. I'm out here. I'm going to get this story. Then now you're a mother. You're like thinking of your son. You're like, okay, I got to think about him. All right. Well, we're definitely going to talk about you're a mom, how that's impacted you as a journalist. I wanted to ask though, what does MMJ mean?
Oh, I should have explained multimedia journalist. So that's when you're the
Multimedia journalist.
reporter and the photographer all rolled into one.
All right. Well, we're going to
And
get.
it's becoming very common like in the industry, but it's always been something that has been at play in smaller markets. And I mean, for safety reasons, to me, I do hope that we start turning away from that, because I don't care where you're working, you just have to be really careful when it's just you by yourself.
Oh my God, 100%. Well, I learned a new term. Okay, well let's go back. Let's talk about you, the beginning, how you got here, and then I want to talk more about motherhood and your personal life and all those good things. So you grew up in New Jersey, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Jersey girl. Where in Jersey?
I lived a few different places, always in South Jersey. If people are familiar with Jersey, I lived in Tuckerton when I was really small. Then I lived in a place called Millville. And then I lived in Moorestown, outside of Cherry Hill, which is kind of by Philly. So that's a little bit more well known of an area. And my parents now live at the Jersey Shore, so like kind of by Ocean City and all that. So it's nice to go visit them. And it's nice to be close to them. I was living across the country for a while. And, like we just went on vacation and we were able to drop off my son, kind of meet my parents halfway, and they watched him, which was amazing. So it's like the first time we've had, I mean, it wasn't that long of a trip, but, several nights away from him. So it's good that they are fairly close.
Oh my God,
So
that's like the dream come true. My husband and I have yet to do that, and I'm jealous. It's like I can't imagine having a night, like several nights of sleep. That'd be amazing. Okay.
yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it. But I mean, obviously you have to have your child with someone you trust. Like I didn't really worry too much, although I did miss him. The first night he like blew me a kiss and I almost cried because
Oh,
I felt
yes.
bad. But he had so much fun, playing there. So
So you grow up in New Jersey. Your parents now live at the Jersey Shore. Did you have siblings growing up? What was life like in New Jersey?
what was life like in New Jersey? I have a younger brother who has two beautiful daughters who I love so much, my little nieces, and it's nice for my son Jackson because he gets to play with them and see them like we were talking about before we started recording. I think Jackson will be an only child, but that's okay. It's going to be all right. He has his cousins who are somewhat close, and hopefully he'll have a lot of friends. But yeah, it was me and my brother in Jersey, and I don't really have anything particularly bad or good to say. I mean, it was great. It was a great childhood. New Jersey, as you know, it's like kind of this weird place because like the big cities are out of state, like New York and Philly, and those are
Yeah.
kind of the anchor cities. And everywhere in New Jersey is to me like very similar, like just a lot of people packed in, a lot of homes, strip malls and malls, and it's just different than other states where like I live in Colorado and the big city is Denver, or maybe to some people the big city is like Colorado Springs, and New Jersey is just a lot of very small places that are all grouped together. But so many people, I will say it's like a great connector because throughout my
Ooh.
life, I've always met people all over the place that have some Jersey connections. Like I was studying abroad and this guy, it was like a homestay situation, and this guy from, I think he was from Ireland, was staying also in my like living quarters, and he had spent some time in New Jersey. And so it's just weird how just throughout my life, you meet people from Jersey everywhere because people are so packed in there.
Look,
I feel like
Jersey's it's a legendary state. Whether, I mean, I'm sure you don't appreciate the stereotypes, but whether it's Jersey Shore or it's the Sopranos or it's the Housewives, I mean, New Jersey is a legendary place. So, I mean,
that's one way to look at it. It's nice to hear. I don't really think of it that way in my mind, but probably just because I grew up there and I just think of it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pivotal state. So your parents growing up, either one of them involved with media? It's been fascinating to hear how people got the bug to become journalists. Were either one of your parents involved?
No, my dad is a pastor. So he, I would say the one thing that sort of is a tie is my dad was very shy growing up, and he's retired now. He just retired in the last few years, but he was truly an amazing minister and touched so many people. Like I just throughout my life, I heard constantly but what a wonderful man my dad was, and I really saw it in action. But I know just his personality, like he's just not an outgoing person. And apparently he was like painfully shy when he was younger. So I think that I drew some inspiration because he was able to become such a wonderful speaker, even with that tendency, to not really.
Yeah, put yourself out there. Yeah.
And I think that I am the same way. I wasn't particularly shy, but I've just never been really a like person that loved public speaking. I think some people you see in this business are just like, okay, you were made to do this, and they have a big personality and they love to talk and kind of the life of the party. And I don't know, that's not so much who I am. I feel like I have a smaller group of friends, and I just actually get very nervous, or I have in the past gotten very nervous when it comes to public speaking. So that was something that I had to definitely work through. But to answer that's a long answer to the question, but no, my dad and my mom did like secretarial work and childcare and that kind of thing. So there was no one in my family that did.
Oh, but that's like, don't you feel like that's how you got the, the kind of drive to call? I mean, your father obviously helped people. You're helping people. I mean, that you can just see the connection.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't know. I started my whole TV news career. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in college, but I actually interned at Fox 5 in the year 2004. So that was a very long time ago.
Oh my God, I love it.
That was like my foray into TV news, where I was very undecided in college. I thought I wanted to do something in media, but I didn't really know what. And I wasn't particularly interested in journalism at that point. I think I considered it, obviously, but it wasn't like my major. I did not major in journalism, but I got this internship at Fox 5 during my last semester in college. And that is really what kicked everything off.
Wow. Oh my God. Who did you work with back in the day when you were interning? Were you with like Tony Perkins?
Terry Tolliver. Terry Tolliver was part of the unit. So I was with the special projects unit, and Terry was part of that.
Wow.
And so I remember her. And other than that, it's funny. I've had this conversation with Fitz, because I think Fitz was working there at the time. Maybe he was just starting, or he had, I think, been there for a little bit. But other than that, I was not a great intern. I mean, I remember. Honestly, I remember Annie Yu was also an intern. Me and Annie Yu were like interns at the same time.
Sure.
And she was like a super intern. She was there like all the time. She was so involved, and just it was a good comparison of somebody that was just like driven and like ready to go and like ready to do everything. She got hired there out of that internship. Like nobody was impressed by me. Like I would stumble in like hungover. I remember I was like Friday morning, and I would like go in and probably still reeking of like, cigarettes and booze from the bar. I didn't smoke, but like back then you could smoke in bars. So I did not exactly make my mark on Fox 5 at the time. But I mean, it was an internship. Like I didn't really go into it with the mentality of like, I'm going to just show everyone.
I freaking love you. I had the same experience. I almost interned at Fox 5, but Michael Gargiulo, who's now an anchor in New York, I said, hey, can I take you to coffee? Anyway, the long story short is he was like, kid, you do not belong in TV. He's like, you have too much of a personality. You're too wild. You need to go into radio. They're going to put you out on a murder beat. You're going to hate your life. And that was my last day of interning. And then I went to morning radio, and the irony is you and I both ended up at Fox. That's like so crazy.
That is really funny. It's funny how people can sort of shape you and guide you, and things happen that sort of put you on this path or that path. And you look back and you see like the significance of it.
And he gave me the best advice. Then I went on the radio and I started busting fake cheaters on War of the Roses. It was like Michael Gargiulo could see that in me. It was like whatever stupid thing we were doing at Hot 99.5. Okay, but wait, before we move on to I love your honesty. Growing up though with a pastor father, how much I've always wondered for kids that grow up like that. Is it really stressful? Was he very like? Did you just always have that pressure to be good?
You would think, but I don't know if I really,
like, no.
I really felt that to some extent. I remember my friends, like at the time would always say that I had like my church voice, or that like when I was at church, because they would be there, from time to time, and they'd always laugh at me because they would call it like church Lindsay. Because obviously, I'm going to behave there at a minimum, like, and be polite. And there were always people talking to me because of my dad, and everybody was just so wonderful. Like, it's such a great memory thinking back on my time growing up in the church. But, my mom was really more the enforcer than my dad for whatever reason. Like, my mom was like pretty hard ass with us, and there were a lot of restrictions. There were these books called, Sunset Island, and they were like teen girl books. I don't know if you were into those at all, but they weren't like quite like the trashy romance novel, but they were like kind of in that direction where I guess you could say maybe your 13-year-old girl shouldn't be reading those. Anyway, my mom like confiscated them. Like, had ordered some CDs from remember like DMV and Columbia House, and you get all the CDs for like penny, but then you got to buy one or something, and gotten all these great CDs. I'll never forget it. I had like I got a range of music. I got Tevin Campbell, and I got Guns N' Roses, and I got Aerosmith, and I think I got Salt and Pepper. And my mom told me that she smashed them all. I don't know if she actually did, but she told me that she took them all away and like destroyed them.
Oh my God.
I was really mad. Like, she's just taking my stuff away, and so I do think, that like my mom also went to seminary. So I think that there definitely was a level of strictness that some of my friends did not have to deal with when it came to that stuff specifically. Like, I always wanted to watch the movie Dirty Dancing. I didn't watch that until I was like 16 or something, maybe even older. I just like wasn't allowed certain things. And
wow. Sounds like you blazed your own trail, though. You would, not really rebel, but I mean, you obviously, you go to college, and you went to college out in LA, right?
I went to grad school at USC, and then I went to undergrad at George Washington. So I was living here in the DC area. I was living right in DC, and that's why I got that.
Look, you're a woman after my own heart, I mean, you were still out there partying, having a good time, I mean, we love the Lord, but we got to have fun. So we got to, we go out there.
Exactly. And, that's how I always thought of it. That's how I always thought of that. Like, I don't think like one is too, connected to another. And I, always had a blast. And sometimes when you're like reining people back, sometimes they like break free a little more. So yeah, there was maybe a little bit of that going on.
Yes. So, okay, undergrad here, you go out to Los Angeles, you do this internship at Fox 5. I love it. You're like, I was a mediocre intern, whatever. Okay, so after that, then how do you get your first gig in TV, or did you do something else before you started?
So oh my gosh, I really wish I had my resume tape that I made at Fox 5. Oh. I don't think I have it, but I remember talking to Terry about it, and the investigative reporter at the time like gave me her blazer, which was a little too big. And so I went out and shot some stand-ups, and I kind of redid a package of hers. So I made this tape. I actually stayed late into the summer, like working on this tape that like, I don't think I ever sent it out. It was not a good tape. I need to find it if it still exists. It might be in a box somewhere from my different moves. But, I had it, but I still felt like I was not ready to be on air, which I really wasn't. So I started applying for a bunch of like PA jobs and like lower level positions at local news stations. And I was up for this position that was at this little station down the street from where my parents lived. So it was like an assignment desk job at the tiny little market. And it was like between me and this other person. Weirdly, they never even brought me in for an interview now that I'm thinking about it, but I didn't get the job. And so then I decided I'm going to move out to LA with this girlfriend of mine who is still out there. She's doing amazing for herself. And I'd always wanted to live in LA. So I was like, let's give this a shot. I'm going to just chill out there for a year, like make some money, maybe try out public relations, see if I like that. And then I'm going to think about going to grad school for journalism. So I didn't actually major in that undergrad. So basically, I was out there for a year. I didn't really like PR. I did try that out and did an internship and was just waitressing and having a blast. I'm really glad I did it. Now, it was very expensive to stay and go to USC. I'm still paying for it. Like, I'm almost done paying these college loans. So this wasn't a kind of thing where like, oh, yeah, my parents just covered it for me. And I went to USC, which is really expensive. And, it was all taken care of. Like, I'm still paying this off. Wow. But I always think when I pay that loan every month that I really had an amazing time living with my best friend out there in LA. And I thought at the time, coincidentally, that I was interested in entertainment reporting, that I thought that would be a direction that I would want to go in, and that would be sort of an ideal job, is to do that. And then I got some experience actually doing it and realized that it wasn't for me after all. But, then I knew, like, I had tried it out and like seen kind of what that was and seeing like what the LA lifestyle was like. And it was really fun for a time. But I think when I got my first job, which was in Yakima, Washington, I was very sad to leave LA, especially for such a small comparison. Yeah. But I think I knew it was time to go and time to, get serious and actually start working.
Damn. Oh my God. I love this. Okay. So you begin to build your journalism career. You're in Washington. And then did you go anywhere else before you kind of come back to DC?
I was in Colorado. So I was only in Yakima for 2 years. And then I was in Colorado Springs for 4. And then I was in Denver for 2.
Oh, wow.
So all told, I was in Colorado almost 7 years. And so those were really, I would say, like my formative years. That first job was a very, very small station. I didn't get a lot of live experience because they didn't have the staff. Like, I didn't work with photographers very often at all. I was typically just like on my own out there shooting and editing all my own stuff. And then Colorado Springs was definitely a step up and a more professional kind of station. And I did feel like there was a bit of a learning curve for me going in there. I was very nervous. I mean, going back to like this thing with public speaking, like I really struggled in the beginning with doing live reporting. And since I didn't do a lot of that in my first market when I went to Colorado Springs, they did a lot of it. And so that was definitely a hurdle for me, and like had some struggles there, but definitely got better in my time there.
Okay, so you're in Colorado a while, and then how did you decide you wanted to come back to DC? How did you get the Fox 5 gig?
Well, my fiance, Joe, had gotten a job. He's also in TV news. So we met in Colorado Springs. Oh. He was working there when I went to work there. So, I mean, going to Colorado Springs definitely was a very, very important part of my life.
Yeah, you got your man there.
If I didn't go to Colorado Springs and I didn't get that job, like probably when I look at all the different things, like, oh, if I didn't go to Yakima, okay. If I didn't go out to LA, okay. Like, but if I didn't get that job in Colorado Springs, like my life would be drastically different right now. And I have no idea what that would look like, but that was a very important step along the way because I met Joe. And then we did separate for 2 years. He got a job in North Carolina. I was working in Denver. So we were apart for that time. And then he got a job reporting here. And that was really a very pivotal moment as well, because you can only make long distance work for so long.
Oh yeah, very difficult.
So that's really what brought me back here. And there was a freelance opening at Fox 5. So I was a little nervous going into something that was not a guaranteed position and not even a guaranteed like 5-day-a-week schedule. But I just decided, let's do it. We initially were living in like someone's basement, like in a rental kind of thing. Sure. And like people renting out their homes. And so we were living down there in the basement together. And then, luckily I was able to get a full-time gig at Fox 5 fairly soon after that and moved into a little condo. And yeah, the rest is history.
Okay, Lindsay, that's amazing. And where does Joe work? Where does Joe work?
So Joe is a writer at Fox 5.
Oh, okay, so that's right.
Joe was doing that reporting gig, and then it was do you remember the DCW?
Yes, yeah.
They tried to do that for a little while, and then they kind of closed up shop. So yeah, he's been just doing writing at Fox 5, and it's been fine. It's been nice because we both work later in the day, and so we have a babysitter come, but we have time with our son in the morning. It's not so much of like that pressure of like waking up and like rushing out the door and like dropping the kid off at daycare and all of that. It's more relaxed. And so I try to, appreciate that when I can,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I know that it's pretty hectic. I like people with multiple kids, like waking up at like 6 in the morning and trying to get them all out the door. I don't know how people do that. And then like you make it to work and then you work the whole day and you're picking them up and then running home, making dinner. Like it's a little more relaxed for us with this schedule. I mean, it can't last forever because Jackson will go to school, but
Don't you
I
think
feel for people.
once you become a mother, don't you see it? Like for me, I'm like, oh, I know why so many women left the workforce during the pandemic. I mean, it's just, it's wild. You don't realize like until you become a mother, like how hard it is to juggle all that. And the kids, want your attention all the time. And then if you have, I can't even imagine how people homeschooled and tried to put kids on video Zooms. I mean, unbelievable,
Yeah, it's just it's a lot. And then, like back in the day, like you understand why it was easier for just one person to work,
Oh,
the mom staying home. Like, some people still do that, but I feel like for the majority of us, that's really not even an option. You
yeah.
need like two incomes to survive in this world.
Yes.
Um, and so, back in the day, it was just, I think, a little easier because, you know,
Yeah,
mom stays
absolutely.
home and dad goes to work and like you still manage to pay the bills. But, I mean, I think everybody, you figure it out. And
Oh,
yeah,
and
I don't know.
they're worth it, right? I mean, it's like it's just the most amazing like feeling ever, like having this child and like seeing them grow and the milestones and interacting and how excited they are to see you.
It
What
really
was
is. It really is.
the biggest shock of motherhood? Because there's been so many for me, like just your body changing, like everything, like crazy. What's been the
Biggest
biggest shock though? The fatigue.
shock.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. I have to, the funny thing for me, my friends and probably my family could tell you this, is some people are really excited to be pregnant. And like, I think at least on social media, you kind of get the impression that people are like counting the minutes and they're photographing themselves every point along the way. And they are so excited and they're decorating the nursery, like, way far in advance. And I had a little bit of a different mindset. Not that I wasn't excited, but I think I was a little apprehensive more than anything. And so I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be something that was phenomenal or amazing. Like I think I was a little more worried about, oh my gosh, like is this going to be really hard? Am I going to be able to do this? Like what are the hurdles that are going to present themselves? And so I had sort of that mentality. And I remember a friend of mine, she's like, are you so excited? And I was like, well, honestly, like I don't know. I think I feel more anxious about it all. But I think that was a good perspective, maybe because there was nothing that really shocked me too much. I think I was more fearing of like things that didn't happen,
yeah.
and it ended up not being that bad. So like you hear about like breastfeeding and like how that can be a struggle, or like you're just getting no sleep. Excuse me. But I think again with our schedules, like we've been fairly lucky, and he's a pretty easygoing kid. I don't know about you. Like, have
Yeah.
you had what was something for you?
Well, it's funny because I agree with you. I think in some ways, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a badge of honor, but I do think like in society and a lot of women kind of scare you, like the whole everything, right? Childbirth and how awful being pregnant was. And to your point, I have to say, like towards the end, it wasn't the most comfortable thing, but actually pregnancy was fun. Like it was very uneventful. You know what I mean? Like it was uneventful. I didn't have all
No,
these.
same.
I didn't have like
Yep.
crazy, like people were like, you're going to be eating pickles and peanut butter. Like none of that happened to
No,
me. Like I had no crazy cravings. Like I craved
no.
oatmeal, which was super boring.
I
So
craved apples. Apples,
there you
like of all
go.
things.
Like a lot of the stereotypical things that people said would happen never happened, I guess. And I think you
Hmm.
and I share that same thing. So yeah, and to your point, I have to say, in some ways, it's a lot easier. My son's going through this like sleep regression thing. I don't know if Jack's ever went through that, but so this is like the only time where we're really not getting sleep. But for the most part, he's been a good sleeper. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why that is that people love to tell you all their horror stories, and then it really wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
No, I mean, I think that's why in my mind I was just like, all right, I'm not going to get too excited and like, because I don't know, people scare you about like postpartum depression,
Yeah.
anxiety. You just never know like how your brain might sort of react to it all. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to take this one day at a time, see how I'm feeling, see how it goes, but not like have a lot of like preconceived notions or like I think it's going to go like this or that.
Oh my God, you're so smart. And isn't that so much better? Oh my God, I agree with you 100%. That was like my experience too. I mean, just like I didn't, things that shocked me, like I didn't realize I had to wash my like son's armpits. And so then like I took him to the pediatrician and his armpits were filled with lint and stunk. And I was like, what? How is this like 5-month old creating sweat? Like,
Oh my goodness, it's so funny.
like I've had all kinds of stuff like that. We routinely would, at first we would take him to the pediatrician. We would take him places. We would never bring the diaper bag. Like we were just, it was so foreign for us to have this like third person. Like we clearly could keep him alive and keep it. But it was just like, oh shit, we got to bring him like food. I mean, it was just like, what?
Yeah, right. No, that's so true. And then you forget the diaper bag. And it's like, oh my gosh, we're gonna need those diapers. Like he's gonna like need a whole new outfit, or like
I know.
we'll take him out to eat because he's pretty good at restaurants, and we love to go out to eat. And so like, just last week, it's like we really didn't bring his cup. Like he can't drink out of a straw yet. Like what the heck?
I know, right? All that stuff. Okay, good. Glad that you guys are having that same experience. Okay. Whew. Okay, so how long you've been full time at Fox for how long?
It has been coming up on 5 years.
5 years. Oh my God, Lindsay, that like flew by.
It's been a long time. Like I think yeah, I haven't worked anywhere else this long in my
That's
career.
amazing. What's the overall goal? Like, do you think about that? Do you think like what you'd want to do next? I mean, obviously you and Joe have great jobs now. You have a son, you have a family here. But like, I love your journey because your journey seemed to just like you've obviously tried new things. It sounds like you never put yourself under too much pressure. You've enjoyed the ride. Where would you want to go next?
Gosh, I don't know. I feel like I've never been. You meet people sometimes that are like, I'm going to get to New York City and that is my goal, or
Yeah.
they just want to be close to home, and so it's like, my goal is to work in Portland, Oregon, and then they spend their career working in Portland, Oregon, and that's kind of the end of it. I've never been too specific. Like it's very random where I've ended up. Like I had no connections, zero anywhere close to Washington State. Like I had no family. Like anywhere nearby.
Yeah.
Same with Colorado, like went in there completely sight unseen, like not knowing, if I'd really like living there or what it would be like. I loved living there. And then I think coming back here was maybe the most, comfortable because I'd lived in the DC area before and my family wasn't too far away. I'm going to college here. I was very familiar with DC. So I just think you always have to sort of be open to what might be coming next. And like I really do want to stay in TV news. I really, really do. But there is kind of it's different, I think, when you have kids. And it was very hard for me as a child to move around. And we only moved within South Jersey, but it was devastating. Like in kindergarten and just so sad about leaving my friends. And then it happened again in 8th grade. And that just, you can't just be moving your kid all over the place.
Yeah,
and
for
so,
that, it really.
For now there's flexibility, but there's going to come a point where you kind of got to pick a place and figure it out. And, yes, things happen. You may have to move once or twice, but, it's just not all about your career and your goals. So I do see that as something that's on the horizon.
Yeah, it stuck with you. Some people, kids move all the time and they really like it but, for you, obviously, those were like significant moments, that you didn't really like. Yeah.
No, oh gosh, I was so sad. I mean, it all worked out looking back. Like, you make new friends in your new place that you live, that you've never met before. But like, it just sucks, as a kid, you're comfortable with your school. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, and guess what? We're going to plant you in this brand new place in a new state.
Yeah. So talk to me. You also launched a podcast in the past year called Siege on Democracy, and it's around the January 6th insurrection. So were you down there at that day?
I was working a little bit later on in the day. So I didn't get there until after it was still ongoing, but I think it was, we kind of missed the height of the craziness that happened there. And so I saw some of it, but because we were just there, like in the later portion of the day, I wasn't right there. But, what was interesting about the podcast is, especially with the pandemic, I didn't see a lot of my coworkers
Yeah.
that I would typically see all the time. And so I found out about what people experienced who were right there, and just some of the really crazy things that they saw, and really the dangerousness of where they were, because it was just so unpredictable about what was going to happen. And of course, tensions were very high on the part of police, on the part of these people. And I think everybody was just absolutely shocked. Lawmakers were in hiding in there, and the media was just right out there kind of roaming around. Most people there were not exactly fans of the press.
Yeah.
Got trashed. And so there were a few of my coworkers that were right there, kind of in the midst of it. And I don't think I would ever known what they experienced and their stories, what they saw, without doing the podcast. And so I feel like, especially that first episode that focused on that, I feel like it's kind of an important kind of historical thing, and that hopefully will, be around, and they can let their kids and their grandkids listen to it, and just talk about, this crazy point in history. So it was really cool to be able to document that and to have those conversations, and find out, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this is what you guys experienced.
You interviewed colleagues. You also had some pretty big names, though, on the podcast. Who were some other guests?
Yeah, I ended up doing an interview with Rod Rosenstein,
Yes.
just talking to him about, as someone who was part of the Trump administration, his thoughts on what happened, and then the aftermath when it would come to like the legal proceedings. And he, I think, was very spot on with what his prediction was, and how a lot of federal cases don't end up going to trial. There's often deals that are made, and that there could be significant jail time for some people, but many would not face that, which again is what we've seen. And then, I just talked to, I really wanted to talk to somebody who was facing charges. And so I just went down the list and just used public record searching to find phone numbers, and just started cold calling, and talked to, a good number of people who would not agree to be recorded. And then finally I spoke to a woman who did an interview and just talked about why she went in the Capitol, and there's pictures of her in the Capitol. And so, I also ended up talking to.
And then was she arrested? And then.
Yeah, she had just gotten arrested before, like a few days before.
Oh, okay, not from your interview. Like she gets arrested before, and then she's like, screw it, I'll go on your podcast. Absolutely.
Well, that's why most people didn't want to talk.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Like it's not. Maybe not like the best advice, but then you saw she wasn't the only one that decided just to share, and I think people felt, and probably still do, that they did nothing wrong, and that they might have even been proud of their role in what they did. And so I'm going to talk about it and put it out there. But yeah, it was interesting. I talked to a family. This was a really interesting interview. It was a mother who was a big Trump supporter, and her husband was part of one of the militia groups that she was involved with as well. So she was kind of explaining from her perspective about this militia group and kind of the benefits of it. And it wasn't really anything that was dangerous or too serious, just kind of a group of like-minded people. And then their son ended up being the one who contacted the FBI about his dad, and cooperated with their investigation, told them everything. I guess he had been recording some conversations with his dad, and sort of what that did to their family, and the dynamics of that. His dad, was one of the people that was held. Like, they did not allow him to get out on bond, and so it split up their family. And so to talk to the mom, and then talk to the son, and sort of see how this event had really shattered their family and would just have these lifelong consequences. I mean, for everyone, I think.
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
There's so many stories to be told with that. Honestly, I could still be doing it. I would love to have made that like my full-time job, and just continue to focus on that, because there's still so much to talk about. But I did that for quite a while, for a few months, and then kind of had to get back to the day-to-day, because obviously there's just so much going on.
So many stories.
In our area. News never stops. And I think now more than ever, it seems like there's just an overwhelming amount of things to talk about.
So tell me this, obviously you get assigned some stories that you have to do, but how do you pick a story? Is it like a gut instinct? Is it like, do you just have a little spidey sense, this one's going to be good? Is it when somebody writes to you? How do you get excited about a story?
I think all of the above. I think the best stories for sure are the ones where you're uncovering something or finding out about something that has not been reported on yet. Because a lot of what we do day to day, especially in this region, unlike in Colorado didn't have the same level of craziness and crime. So you kind of had to do a lot more digging on the regular, or finding some unique ideas, or going to this meeting an hour away because they're discussing a topic, whatever it might be. But here, there's just so much that's just presenting itself on the table every day. But I still believe that the best stories are the ones where you're the only one that's really finding out this information, or you're the only one that got this report or got this specific interview, or whatever it might be. And those don't come along every day or even every week. But I think, to me, that's sort of keeping the eye on the prize, because that's the purpose of what journalism is supposed to be about. We can all talk about the same topics and sort of, cover the crime and cover the things in front of us. That's still important, but I think there's a lot out there that is unknown, and a lot out there that should be exposed, and you just have to go about finding that. And I think there's a lot of different ways. I mean, typically you're talking to somebody who knows about this, or somebody sends you something. You can do open records requests as well and get documents that way to find out about, whatever it might be that you're trying to. You may have an inkling that
something's up.
Yeah. Or hey, I wonder about this. I wonder how much the county government is spending on such and such, and so there's different ways that those stories can come about. But those are the more challenging stories to do, because it's not spelled out for you. It's not
you got to really dig.
Press release, like, this is kind of like you're kind of going in your own path and like making your own your own road to travel. And but again, like, I think those are the ones. I mean, from the very beginning of my career in Yakima, I think those are the stories that are the most rewarding.
Lindsay, you're obviously very young in your career, but what's been the biggest career challenge so far? I mean, for me, it would be Annie U showing me up as an Annie U working 75 hours a week, while I'm hungover. But what has been the biggest career challenge so far?
The biggest challenge so far, I think I just kind of touched on it already, like the fear of public speaking and doing live shots.
Oh, really? You still struggle with that? Oh my God, you wouldn't know it.
It's finally. I think we're finally to a point where, like, I've gotten over the hurdle. But for some people, it's just. I think you sound like someone who's just a natural. Like, you don't censor yourself, and I think everybody just has a different mentality about that. Like, some people are just great. Some children are great. You ever just meet little kids?
Yes.
Just like fabulous public speakers, and you're like, what the heck is this?
They have so much confidence.
Better public speaker than me.
You would never know it from watching you. And it's funny, you say that about me. I don't mind speaking or hosting, but the last sort of public speaking hurdle is I really want to be a stand-up comic, and I'm deathly afraid to do it. And I have spoken in front of people, to your point, for years. Like, if you were like, oh, hey, can you go up and keep this crowd entertained for 15 minutes? I'd have no problem. Like, I could speak in front of anyone. But
yeah, that's amazing.
Stand-up comedy is like a whole nother. I mean, you have to win over strangers. And
I have always thought, like, those are the bravest people on the planet.
They are
the bravest, because that would be my ultimate fear. Because not only do you have to remember what you're going to say, but like you can't have it memorized, and you have to like be able to read the room, kind of feel it out. Like, I think the best comics can ad lib and improvise
totally
with kind of what's going on, and just be like really sharp. And it's just a lot to remember, and like there's the potential that you could just
bomb. I know. Bomb.
You should do it though. You should do it. You'd be great.
I just started working on I'm like, I have to do this. I have to, even if I just do it, like, my goal is like 10 times, just like do it to see if you like it. If, because what are you afraid of? You speak in front of people all the time. It's like crazy, but to your point, to get them to laugh, to keep them entertained, it's very difficult, like that's so hard. Okay, tell me about, what do you and your husband enjoy doing aside from work? You guys have both stressful jobs, but what do you like to do together? You just went to the Bahamas together. So jealous. What else?
I love to travel. I love to travel. Although I have to say, like, well, I don't know if I'm going to do another international trip for a while because
Really?
that was very stressful. We almost didn't go because you have to test for COVID before you leave, and Joe got a false positive.
Oh,
3 days before he was going to leave. We did a rapid test from a drugstore, and oh my gosh, like that was some stress I didn't know I did not need in my life. Like it was awful because I mean the bigger thing would be like, did our son get exposed? I mean, is Joe going to get sick? So that's like the primary thoughts that you have when you get this positive test back. But then it's like, wait a minute, like we got to make sure like 100% that this wasn't a false positive.
you take the test again.
You know, none of us had symptoms, and my test was negative. So he went about like that same day, got 3 more tests done. But for these lab tests, some places are still taking like 1 to 2 weeks to get the results back. And so we were trying to leave in 3 days. And luckily my friend told me about a place where you could get a quick lab test. We didn't end up getting the results back until the day before we were going to leave.
Oh.
So then, we went, but then to get back into America right now, you have to test again. And so because of this whole experience, I was very nervous that what if there's something like in his nose that makes him more prone to a false positive or something, and we get stuck there, or he gets stuck there, like what are we going to do? So that was like a definite kind of like very stressful moment before the trip, and then on the trip, just because I don't even know. I didn't even look up how long they'd make you stay there because I felt like if I looked it up and it was like 2 weeks.
Oh God, you'd be so depressed.
I just cancel the whole thing because that would be, I mean, we wouldn't see our son all that time. It would just be a disaster and not worth it. So I'm not sure that could be like what happens if you test positive when you're overseas. I mean, health and safety is a priority, and you can't be getting on a plane if you have COVID, obviously. But you'd bankrupt yourself in the Bahamas. I don't even know like what you would do, like if there's a special area. I didn't look into it because I didn't want to know.
Oh my God. All right. Well, we're ending these interviews kind of rapid fire questions. So tell me how Joe proposed to you.
Oh my gosh. Joe proposed to me randomly one morning. I was in bed. I was wearing a shirt that said, "That's too much cheese, says no one ever." I got it like from the station. Like it was just like laying on a table. You like grab the shirts that like somebody brought in as a promotion. So it was like, it just woke up one day and he decided to do it. And he had gotten these pictures framed that he like gave me first. And then in the bottom, it was the ring and like a little sign that said, "Will you marry me?" that I still have. And that's the funny thing about Joe is like, we were actually going to Costa Rica like that next week or something. Like we had planned a trip. So we could have done it there, but he was like, that would have been too much stress. So I just decided to do it on this random morning. But it was a very fitting kind of low key proposal, and it was lovely.
Oh my gosh. That is so cute.
That's my engagement shirt.
I'm glad you kept the shirt. People always think that we have this hair and makeup team when you come to work. And I always tell people, no, everybody at Fox 5 does their own hair and their own makeup. Which do you dislike doing the most, the hair or the makeup?
Probably makeup. I'm just not very good at it. Like some people are really great and you can tell they've maybe watched some YouTube tutorials, and I could watch those tutorials, I suppose, but I don't know. Like I could probably just do a little better, but you do what you can. And my makeup bag, you should see it. It's just like some people, do you ever see some people's like makeup kits that they bring in?
Yeah.
They're multi-tiered and they have multiple brushes and everything is very organized and they just a lot of makeup. Well, like I have a bag that's like yay big and it's just like a bunch of stuff thrown into it. And that's it. Makeup bag.
Love you. I feel like you and I could be twins. Like I absolutely love, like you are my gal. Okay. Tell me one story about did you ever have a funny church story like that because you obviously had to go to church, I'm sure every Sunday having a pastor as a father. Anything funny that happened? Did you end up stealing all the parishioners' money or what?
Never embezzled from the church. Not yet.
You're not going to admit that. I wouldn't admit that one.
Probably a funny thing that I just pops into my mind is my first real boyfriend happened to live right next to the church. Mm-hmm. And so I would sneak away over there from time to time and felt like a real baddie.
I would have too. Oh my
It was in eighth grade, my eighth grade boyfriend. Like that was, I really wasn't like, that was like my first like legit boyfriend at the time. And he just happened to be like right there across the street. So he'd be like, just come over. So
Oh my
no, I don't
God.
think my parents ever knew.
Oh my God, I love it. And tell me this, what is your favorite thing about DC, this city?
Favorite thing about DC? Oh, there's so many. I don't want to say something lame, like just, the monuments and stuff, but I mean, that's pretty cool. Like, it's pretty cool to be right here. And I feel like all the museums and all of the historical sites, like, okay, do I go every weekend? No, but having a little boy now, especially when he gets into like 2-3 years old,
yeah.
I think he's going to really love this and be able to appreciate it. And so I'm getting excited about the idea of like taking him to see that woolly mammoth thing and the Space Museum. And there's just so many cool things, to expose him to. And it's like, a quick drive away. And so I think that stuff is going to start really, being a great asset. I would say before that, like just like brunch. I really like brunch. And like,
I like
on drinking on rooftop patios and stuff like that. But those days are a little bit in the past.
Can Joe keep up with your drinking like back in the day? Like who would be more fun, you or Joe? Joe couldn't keep up.
What was great, this was great in Colorado Springs, is that Joe, there was a lot of nights, he anchored on the weekends. So he obviously like a lot of times would meet up with us like later in the night. And he would be my DD. And like Joe's the responsible one. And honestly, like you can't have two people. Like, no, I've calmed down since then. But especially back then, we were both like a little messy, a little too many shots at the bar kind of people. Then I think that can be volatile. And like you need a safe ride home. You need like someone who's can make sure you like get where you need to go and are not just like passed out on the road. And just someone that can right the ship. And so that was definitely Joe back in the day. And I appreciate him putting up with me. I like have this memory, random memory. I was wearing these super high heels. And I was like messing around and like running down the street in Colorado Springs, running around. And I just fell flat on my face. Like I fell on my face, just on the sidewalk, like splat. And this cop rolls up because he probably thinks that Joe like pushed me down. I mean, there's a lady just like laying flat down on the street. So he just stopped to see what was going on. And, Joe like smoothed it all over and like, oh, okay. And anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, that was those are the dynamics of our relationship back then.
I think we have found out from this interview that Lindsay Watts is a badass, like the best person to drink with. Like, I mean, I know it's not fun anymore because we're moms, and nothing is worse than having a few drinks and then getting up semi-hungover with a child. It's the worst. People were right about that. They weren't exaggerating on that one.
Oh, yeah. No, I can't. I think like the most drunk, so, in the 2 years, like, so 2 years since I've had him and then obviously like pregnancy. So we're almost going on 3 years now. Like, I think being in the Bahamas, like that was about the drunkest I've gotten in like 3 years.
Yeah. It's really hard.
You can't deal with that. You can't be waking up and doing baby stuff and like not be right in the head because it hurts so bad now too. Like I really tried to like hang on through my 30s and try to like keep the momentum going. But there comes a time where like it physically feels like you cannot do it. Like it's not worth it. Like something very bad's going to happen, like worse than falling on your face in the street. Like you gotta dial back.
Lindsay Watts, where can people follow you? What's your social media? You're on Instagram, you're on Twitter.
Yeah, so I can never remember. I think Instagram is Lindsay A. Watts. So it's Lindsay with an A-Y-A Watts. Instagram, I think I got on early enough that it's just Lindsay Watts. Like I just got my actual name. And then if you just search Lindsay Watts, Fox 5, DC on Facebook, you will find me there.
Love it.
No TikTok for me. But
not yet. You'll be on that though. I mean, I'm sure. You're like
a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
There's only so many hours in the day.
It's so true. When can people watch you? You're on Monday through Friday.
I work Sundays. I like
Sundays.
Sunday nights. It's a good like kind of start to the week. So I work for the 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock shows on Sunday through Thursday. And then Friday, I'm chilling.
Love it. Lindsay Watts, you were great. Thank you so much.
It's always so good to talk to you. We really should hang out soon. We should do a play date sometime.
Girl, we have to. Fun. Are you kidding? Please. And Joe and Dan will have to pick us up because we'll have like a bottle of champagne. The boys can do their thing.
Yeah, and they can kind of take the kids or to be like the chaperones.
Yeah.
Make sure we all get home okay. What could go wrong? I think that would be great.
What could go wrong? Thanks, Lindsay.